It is Wednesday, August 24th here in RockVox Studio in Rochester, New York. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Matt Schauf. With me are Jared Smola and Adam Krautwurst. No Mike Shope today, though, because, Adam, he's busy driving an apartment building back from Gettysburg, PA, I believe, right?
Yeah, I heard he just sent me a picture. I think he sent us a picture of the size of this thing. Apparently, Mike, he's not with us today because he's driving back, but apparently he had a near-death experience in this RV driving. So he is okay, and he expects to be with us tomorrow night for the podathon. But I'm happy he seemed a little shook up. But hey, I would never even dare driving that thing. I mean, you got to be a real alpha male.
I got to imagine that thing would have done the damage, right?
Right? Yeah.
Whatever he almost hit.
I haven't heard the story, but it seems like everybody's okay. But yeah, he'll be with us tomorrow night for the podathon.
The only way I ever want to travel in one of those is laying on something way in the back of it where
That's
I'm
right.
only mildly aware that it's moving.
Eating gummies and sleeping on the bed in the back.
Absolutely. Drinking something like, what? I'm in my apartment. It's okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll be happy to have Mike back with us. And as you just mentioned, a podathon tomorrow night. Lots of hours of drafting and lots of guests on that, right, Adam? Right on the Draft Sharks YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. Yeah, it's going to be super fun. So we're probably for 6 straight hours tomorrow, and then next Thursday. So tomorrow will be the football guys, FFPC. 3 straight drafts, so many guests. I'm going to tweet that out today, the guests we're going to have tomorrow. And then next Thursday will be the tournament, the FFPC Best Ball Championship. Mm-hmm. Yeah, where we'll have more guests, 6 more straight hours. I might not have a wife by the time August is over. But it'll be fun.
You can pick one up off of waivers, though, come September, right?
Yeah, that's right.
They'll be available.
That's right.
There'll be other husbands dropping their wives come football season. That's what happens every year. We've seen it. Come on. So, yeah, Jared and I will definitely be drafting in the Best Ball Championship. We were just talking before the show. I'm not even sure yet whether I'm going to draft in that FBG marathon, but maybe. I mean, I've got a draft to fit in somewhere, so we'll have to see. I might have to check the status of my marriage to decide whether I'm drafting or staying.
You got your main event tonight. You got the butterflies yet?
Baby.
No, there's no butterflies. No? I'm excited. No? Oh, I love this.
I always get a little nervous when the main events kick off. As long as I've been doing this, the main events have a different feel to them.
I mean, it's definitely a different field, but it's excitement for me. And last year, I swept my league in the main event, so I'm ready to try to do that again. And excited for this draft. So we'll be recording that tonight. We're not going to stream it live because honestly, I feel like it's going to be a better show that way. Because if we were streaming it live, I'm not going to tell people what I'm about to draft because people can and probably are watching those shows. Like, it just takes 1 or 2 members of the league to watch to change that. But we're going to be recording it so that I can say what I'm hoping is going to happen as it gets to me, see if it happens, and, talk through everything without limitation.
Now, unfortunately, you're going to be giving away a lot of your strategy for that draft on this show right here. So hopefully those. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. Yeah, no, that's a good point I think every content. Like if you're going to do, like I get people want people in their chat for these drafts, which is fun. But like if you really want to give people like good advice, you need to not live stream it and you need to talk. Like I'm watching some of these streams and they won't even like talk about players. Like don't say players' name. Like, well, we're supposed to be helping people here. So like just tape it and play it a couple hours later or the next day.
Yeah, look for that on Thursday. That'll be there. Then, of course, the podathon that Adam mentioned. Today, we're going to be talking about the perfect draft, and it's a series that's been on Draft Sharks forever. You see it come out on other sites now, too, but it's been on Draft Sharks forever. We do it every year. Jared and I have mentioned it on here. It's really tedious to actually put the article together, but a very helpful series of articles. Those are live right now. We're going to be updating those. We're going to be talking about it on the show today. Really, it's the perfect place, I think, to be talking perfect draft, too, because we got comfy chairs. We got these professional-grade mics at RockVox Studios. We got cameras that are probably more honest than they should be for a guy who stayed up too late last night and is wearing my work on my face a little bit. Of course, the helpful Scott Fitzgerald, who's here, not only like being nice to us as we invade his house here, but also making sure our stuff looks good. And I like being in the room with you guys. My favorite part of podcasting from the studio, though, is probably that I drive home and there's a video file and an audio file waiting for me. I don't have to edit this stuff when we're done.
Can't beat it.
That is sweet.
So if you are in this area, you're looking for professional recording help like we are, check out rocvox.com. The perfect draft articles, like I said, hit the site last week. They're going to be updated today. They probably are updated by the time you're listening to this. We've got 10 team, we got 12 team, we got 14 team, we got PPR, we got non-PPR. So we should have the format to fit what you want. Today we're going to be going by position and talking about our perfect drafts. And I think that we'll probably lean toward 12-team formats because that's the most common, and the fewer teams you get, the easier it gets. You can certainly set up a draft war room for whatever size league and get your perfect draft. We'll be leaning 12 teams. We could talk about any variations for other sizes as we go. But Jared, why don't you kick us off at quarterback and tell us what the perfect way to approach that position is?
Quarterback for me is the easiest position this year. I want a difference maker. I want one of the elite guys. I think they're all too cheap. I think they're, not all of them. Allen goes a little higher than I want to take. Justin Herbert goes a little higher than I want sometimes. But for me, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, those three guys, the rushing upside, and really, especially with Kyler and maybe even Hurts this season, the passing upside. Those guys have a chance to lead the position in fantasy points. And again, be a difference maker on a weekly basis and throughout the entire season. So those are kind of the three guys I'm targeting. You can usually get one of them in round 6, sometimes even round 7. And we'll talk about some of the other positions and where there's like tier drop-offs. But when you get to round 6 of these drafts, there is not much I'm worried about missing out on at the other position. So I'm willing to spend that 6th round pick on one of these elite quarterbacks.
I'm glad you said round 6 because that's exactly what I was thinking about, seeing if one of these top 6 guys falls to that round.
Not only that, I don't love a ton of the other skill guys in those rounds, receivers, or running backs. Yeah, I think that's a really, really sweet spot there. The 5th round, 6th round, even sometimes the 7th round. I did my targets and fades for the home league stuff, and it's Kyler Murray's going at the 512, Jalen Hurts at the 609. I mean, Hurts you can get in some high stakes leagues even later, 7th, 8th round. I've gotten Murray in the 7th round of main event drafts. So yeah, I mean, I would pass. Even like last year, so like the top quarterback last year was Patrick Mahomes off the board. He was going at the 2-3 turn regularly in high stakes, and in home leagues he was going even higher. Now Josh Allen, who's the QB1, being drafted, he's going at like the 3, 4, 5 range. So even like the quarterbacks, even the number 1 QB by ADP is falling a little bit more. I would still not take the Josh Allen just because I never want to be the first team to take a quarterback, but. And Kyler Murray has such a sweet playoff schedule too. Like he has shootouts those 3 weeks. I think it's Bucks, Falcons, who he's going to destroy, and one other shootout, Denver. So that's really the big thing too. Like if I'm going to take a quarterback and I'm going to spend a higher pick to get one of the elite ones, I want him to have a really sweet playoff schedule.
Kyler Murray looks good because he tends to be the one that drops most often among that top 6. And it is the top 6 for me. If you look in our rankings, you'll see a little gap between number 6 and number 7, Joe Burrow. And that's the way it is for me. I'm not even sure I would have Burrow that close to the top 6. So I like seeing if one of those guys gets to round 6. The specifics there can depend on exactly who's on the board. And as Jared said, we'll talk about running backs and wide receivers in that range as well. But I could start looking in round 4. And if I'm like, well, I really like how the first 3 rounds went, I don't love anybody else here in round 4, and Josh Allen's here, I am almost always not going to be the first quarterback drafter, but I am willing to make Josh Allen the first quarterback off the board in round 4 this year if I don't love something else facing me. And, beyond that, it's looking at that top 6, like I said, whoever falls. And if it's close between should I jump now or wait until round 7 and see if one gets to me, I'm okay with waiting because I see Russell Wilson as a fallback within the next couple rounds. I think by, October, we could be like, oh, Russell Wilson should have been in our top 6 as well. So I think he's a fallback. And then, even if I'm settling for Matthew Stafford, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, somebody in that range, that's okay. That's not optimal, I don't think, but that's an okay safety net.
This is a good time to remind people too to have the full draft board open, know what other teams picking around you still need. If you're picking, 6-10 and the 2 guys between your 6th and 7th round picks, even if one of them has a quarterback and one doesn't, and there's still 2 of these guys available, say, Murray and Hurts are still available, do not take one in the 6th round.
Right.
Assume that someone's not going to double up on a quarterback, and that, one of those guys is going to make it back to you in the 7th round.
And in that point too, like especially in home leagues, you can trade. He's going to make a mistake. If they make a mistake, take 2 quarterbacks early, they're going to end up trading one of them. Yep. You'll be fine. The Josh Allen point is interesting. Like the only time I would consider Josh Allen would be like if I've got Stephon Diggs and I'm maybe, like you said, I'm in the 4th round and all my targets are gone. I would not take him in the 3rd. But if you're in the fourth and you have Diggs and week 17, he's going to smash. He's Cincinnati. Cincinnati's defense stinks and their offense is amazing. That's going to be a shootout. So you certainly can do. You'll be fine with Josh Allen on your team, and then he has that championship winning ability week 17.
I can't wait to see that Bills-Bengals game be 15 degrees and 30-mile-per-hour winds in a 14-10 final.
No
we'll
way.
get the Patriots-Bills game from last season.
I was
Win
at that
Bowl
game.
too.
No.
Yeah, so I think right there it's also worth noting the difference between high stakes or tournament drafts and home leagues, where there's a lot less opportunity cost to taking the first quarterback in a home league than there is in a larger field or a higher level draft. There are going to be some soft spots in your league. Even if you draft with some folks that you think are very good or have found are very good, there's going to be one or two soft spots in the league. You're going to be able to find wide receivers and running backs a little bit more easily there than you will in, say, the high stakes drafts.
Yeah. Can we talk about Trey Lance?
Yes, I was just gonna say that.
He's my fallback guy. If I don't get one of those top six, if I happen to miss on, Hurts and Kyler Murray in the 6th round, Trey Lance, we have his ADP sitting early 9th round. I looked at ESPN's ADP. They have him early 10th round. So that's kind of the range, I'd even be willing to, move up and take him in round 8 if you miss out on those, top 6 guys. I don't see how Trey Lance fails. I really don't. With his rushing ability and the weapons they have, even if he's a well below average passer, with the weapons there and his rushing ability, like he's gonna finish as a top 12 fantasy quarterback, and he has the upside to join the Kyler Murrays and Jalen Hurts as a top 5 guy.
Yeah, historically, the amount of rushing attempts he's going to have, historically, those guys always finish in the top 10. Like, it's so hard to finish with the amount of rushing attempts he's going to have and not finish in the top 10. So Trey Lance was a great point. I'm glad you brought him up. Trey Lance and Russell Wilson, to me, are the two guys. If you do miss out on the elite ones, just wait and grab Lance. And if you're a little bit nervous about, I'm not, but if you're a little nervous about Lance being terrible or losing the job or whatever, there's so many quarterbacks later you can go get. You can go get Trevor Lawrence, guys later on that we like.
Yeah, I think my only concern for Trey Lance would be if we have wide swings week to week, where one week he's got 40 points and the next week he's giving you 8. So maybe if I have Trey Lance, I'm more likely to draft a second one. And that's kind of the final point on quarterbacks is if I get one of those top 6 or even Russell Wilson, I'm probably not bothering with a second in most leagues. And, unless we're talking like 20 plus rounds, and it's like, whatever, I'll take a backup just because everybody in my league is probably taking them. But Trey Lance, I think, is the first guy where I'm like, I'm going to have a second around just to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I'm glad Adam brought up Trevor Lawrence. I have him down here as like my last fallback option if I somehow miss on all those guys we've talked about. Trevor Lawrence, 12th round, 13th round ADP, depending on your site. He doesn't have the top 5 upside, but I do think he's undervalued where he's going in fantasy drafts. I think he has a good chance to finish top 12 this season.
I think Justin Fields is worth bringing up in that QB2 range for the same reason as Trey Lance. Like, he obviously doesn't have the receivers. He does not have the offense. He doesn't have we'll see about the offensive lines because there are concerns about the San Francisco one as well. So overall, it's a much worse situation, but a similar profile in that he is a terrific runner, also a good deep ball thrower. So if Justin Fields stays healthy, I think he's a very good bet to at least be inside the top 15 with certainly upside into the top 6.
Yeah, lots of concerns with Fields, but when I get into drafts and I see him still sitting there after like 15 quarterbacks off the board, my finger kind of wants to click his name.
Yeah, if he's 12th in ADP, I'm like, I'll go somewhere else. But if he's 16th, it's like, oh, yeah, I'll stash Justin Fields and see what happens.
Yeah, and the thing about taking two QBs too. Now I've co-owned enough teams with people, and a lot of people like to go naked quarterback. Oh, I just want one quarterback, but like specifically for me, I'm in so many leagues, and each person has their own amount of leagues, right, that they can handle for lineup setting and that. Like, I don't want to be grinding waivers for quarterbacks. Like, I get the solo QB, naked QB thing, but like, I would much rather take, we're going to probably cut our 18th round pick anyways. So I'd rather, if it gets to the point where there's no high upside guy that I really want, I'm going to take Trevor Lawrence, or I'm going to take a backup where I don't have to spend 20 hours a week just on trying to pick up quarterbacks for the 50 plus rosters that I have to run. So I think there's something to be said about like your personal bandwidth and how much you can do.
And the fab money too. I mean,
right.
If you're having to pick up a few quarterbacks throughout the season to cover bye weeks or whatever, that fab money can add up.
Mm-hmm. Certainly though, if you're in a home league, 16 rounds, regular starting lineup,
sure.
You don't have to worry
correct.
too much about that kind of stuff. Yeah. Go ahead and pass on the second one. Even if you have Trey Lance, frankly, you can draft a second one if you want, but you definitely don't need one. Yep. Superflex, real quick before we move on to running backs. For me, guys, I would like to get one quarterback among the first 2 rounds. That other pick is really going to depend on specifically where I am and specifically who's on the board. But I don't feel like I need to get 2 quarterbacks to start that draft. And Superflex and 2 QB are basically the same thing because you want to start 2 quarterbacks every week in Superflex. But I think that's one way where you can find value is a lot of people get into that format and they're like, well, I need to make sure I get my 2 quarterbacks and then I'll start drafting. By that point, you could have some studs to go with your 1 stud quarterback.
And those drafts can vary so much, as we saw in the DS invites, exactly how early the quarterbacks fly off the board. I think setting tiers in Superflex is so important, and just knowing your quarterback tiers and, saying, I want to make sure I get 1 guy to this tier, then at least 1 guy out of this last tier, and just, make sure you don't miss out on that second quarterback.
Yeah, and it depends on where you're drafting too. Like if you're picking 10, 11, or 12, and you take 1 QB, and you're okay with getting, like, I'm comfortable with guys like Trevor Lawrence as my QB2 in Superflex at that 3-4 turn. So, but if you're not comfortable with that, you got to be prepared to just go double tap quarterback at the in the first 2 rounds. Or you got to have your quarterback sleepers that you like a little later on. It really does get interesting as to how teams like to build is going to affect the way your team drafts.
Make sure you set your tiers and leave your opponents in tiers. Let's move on to running back now. I'm most likely, Jared, taking 1 running back within the first 2 rounds. That second spot really depends on where I'm drafting, who I'm drafting with. And when I say where I'm drafting, I mean where in the order, because it differs a lot who's on the board. And right around the 1-2 turn, I like more receivers than I do late in round 2. And then when we get to late in round 2, we've got Alvin Kamara and James Conner staring us in the face. And it's really tough for me to pass on both of those guys. For Tyreek Hill, I guess, is the guy that I'm most often considering there. I want to take some Tyreek Hill, but it's not a smash for me if I have those running backs looking at me, regardless of who I took at 1, 2, or 3 in round 1.
Yeah, we should start with the caveat, of course, that it matters if you're PPR, half PPR, non-PPR. It matters your starting requirements. If you have to start, 3 wideouts versus 2 wideouts, it's going to bump the wideouts. And in your draft war room, we'll do all that for you and sort of, rearrange the player values across positions depending on your league settings. But yeah, I think you're right, Matt. I do want at least 1 in the first 2 rounds with the, Saquon Barkley still gets into the second quite often. I think in home leagues especially, he's going to be there more often than not. Then the 2 guys you mentioned, Kamara and Fournette, who are usually there in the
I said Connor, not Fournette.
Oh, no. Connor's a 3rd rounder. You can get him in the 3rd pretty regularly. I mean, I'm with you that he probably should be more of a late 2nd rounder, but I'm good with Kamara and Fournette in the late 2nd round. And, if I do start with a wide receiver like Kupp or Jefferson in the early 1st, I'm usually targeting Kamara or Fournette coming back in the 2nd.
Yeah, definitely for home leagues, Saquon Barkley is generally always going to be there in the 2nd round. His ADP is 2.7, which is great. And if I'm picking in the back half of a draft like that, I'm still okay with taking him in the 1st round just in case at the back end, and definitely taking him at the beginning of the 2nd round. To me.
Well, while we're on Barkley, we are getting plenty of people in the Discord talking about how their Barkley's going like 8th or 11th, and I don't think they're going to get around the turn to me. So, if you really do want Barkley, it's okay to take him there. And I think in those leagues, there's probably a better chance that one of those late round 1 wide receivers gets around to you. Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, CeeDee Lamb in that range.
Yeah, it's too scary to let him go because he could be the RB1. After McCaffrey, JT, and like Barkley, there's like no running back that I'm really targeting in the first couple rounds. Connor, I get it round 3, and I take them because I need to, and it's fine. But like guys that I'm targeting, guys that I'm like kind of building around, it's really just McCaffrey, Taylor, Barkley. I do have some Eckler because when healthy, Eckler's awesome, and it's even more comfy now because it looks like the secondary running backs there are either not good or they're hurt or both. So I'm fine with that. But like other than that, man, I'm waiting until like the mid rounds to really attack the RB position. I just don't feel. I feel like every time I'm up on the clock between an RB and a receiver, I always want the receiver. So I just kind of end up leaning that way.
James Conner consistently going in round 3 makes it easier for me to take Tyreek Hill late in round 2 because James Conner absolutely should be in round 2. He's got a round 1 workload coming his way. The depth chart behind him is weak enough that Eno Benjamin is the buzz guy. And as good as Eno Benjamin can be, is not a threat to James Conner. They paid him to be a feature back. I think everybody, everywhere, every set of ADP that I look at is undervaluing James Conner. And it's honestly crazy to me that more people aren't saying that because it's not like I'm projecting the production to the guy. twice in the past 4 years, he's finished top 6 among PPR running backs. This is a guy that we know can produce. We know that they want him to be the lead guy in Arizona. We know that they're friendly to running backs. So I'm gonna like my perfect running back draft includes James Conner. That's the one. That's like the one name that I know I want because of where he's going and what I expect from him. And I feel so much better about him than Leonard Fournette because the offseason finds Leonard Fournette getting fat with his kids while James Conner is chopping down trees and then throwing them backward over his head. So I mean, give me the chopping down trees guy.
Yeah, I'm with you that Connor and Fournette are, project similarly. The only reason I don't have more Connor, honestly, is just because I like the wide receivers in that range, and that's where Kyle Pitts goes in that range too. So the third round to me is you can go a number of directions and be okay, but to me, Connor being available in the third is a reason to feel comfortable starting wide out, or wide out in an elite tight end, because I do think if Connor's your RB1, you're just fine.
Yeah, I think it gives you flexibility from any of those spots, and I agree. If Connor's your RB1, I feel good about that. I am generally coming out of the first 3 rounds with 2 running backs, just with how it tends to line up, but I'm also very flexible with those first 3 picks.
Let's talk about the 4th round running backs, because these are the guys that are giving me trouble. Zeke Elliott, Breece Hall, Cam Akers. I see the upside path for all of them. I'm worried about all of them. I really don't want any of those 3 to be my RB1. I think they could even be your RB3, and I think if they're your RB2, you're okay. Are you guys targeting any of those 3? None of those 3?
Yeah, Breece Hall would be my target in the 4th round, you said?
Yep.
Yeah. If he falls to the 4th round, he's a guy that's more comfortable as my RB2, as an RB2, but I also don't mind him in I guess it's not really a hero RB build when you take your running back in the first running back in the 4th round, but he's a guy that
it's a hero. Let's call it hero RB with a sidekick.
There you go, with a sidekick. There
Batman and Robin.
Yeah. It's just that round is so ripe with receivers that I just end up not even if Breece Hall falls, great. I consider it, and I just took Breece Hall in the 4th of a FFPC main event, but I just don't plan on it because a lot of times he's going in the 3rd, his ADP's the 3rd, but he is a guy that I'm targeting, especially in home leagues because he's going later. I think the 4th I put on there is where he's going. Yep, for 405, great, fine. But Breece Hall would be the guy because I still think he has the path to a workhorse load there. I get they're not a great team, but they have weapons. Saleh comes from San Francisco, wants to have that run scheme where they have that one running back there. I get Michael Carter's okay, but if they liked Michael Carter, they wouldn't have drafted Breece Hall. So I feel like Breece Hall could be a guy that, I don't care that he had 4 carries for a yard in the preseason game. I'm sure one of you guys is gonna hammer me for that. But I just the upside there, but I get it. This is the RB dead zone. We can talk ourselves into freaking any running back in this range. Zeke Elliott, I get it. But to me, Breece Hall, give me the young guy, he could finish as a top 10 running back easily. So that's the way I look at it.
This is the range where I start to not like running back. And I've shifted on Breece Hall because I like very much the prospect. I agree that he's almost definitely better than Michael Carter, but the Jets sure seem like they're planning to run these guys as a split backfield and might even be Michael Carter on the field first when they get to the regular season. Now, I think that ultimately Breece Hall will outscore Michael Carter, but I also worry that the Jets are just going to limit what the ceiling is. And I think there's enough of a question there combined with what I can get at running back over the first 3 rounds that I feel better when I take 2 running backs in those first 3 rounds, take a wide receiver either in round 1 or in between them. And then I'm looking wide receiver in this range. So, if I can get James Conner in round 3 and Alvin Kamara in round 2, I feel better about starting my draft with Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson in the first half of round 1. That's those are the guys that are going in that range. If you're picking early in round 1, it changes if you're talking about later in round 1, but 4 through 6, I hate the running backs, to be honest. I love Breece Hall again, and I'm more willing to take him if he's my 3rd running back, and I'm okay with getting out of round 4 with 3 running backs and 1 wide receiver, especially if we're talking about a home league type of setup. But otherwise, David Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins, and I just put a shark bite on this morning about the early season outlook for J.K. Dobbins. Jamison Hensley said,
I missed it.
So basically what Jamison Hensley says, and he's the ESPN guy for the Ravens, it's it's too early to say when the Ravens will be willing to give him double-digit touches. What? If he's not getting double-digit touches, and that's not carries, touches, if he's not getting 10 to 12 touches in week 1, then I don't want him where you're drafting him.
Yeah, I think Dobbins probably won't be startable to open. I mean, he's not even working in full team 11 on 11 stuff yet, and we're 2.5 weeks away from the start of the season. So yeah, to me, the round 4 isn't the RB dead zone yet to me, because I do think Hall, Akers, and Zeke have like RB1 upside. It's after those 3 are off the board. That's when the dead zone starts to me. That's where I don't want to mess with these. Now, I'd still rather take a wide receiver in round 4 than Breece Hall, Cam Akers, or Zeke Elliott. But I do think if you're sitting on 0 running backs through the first 3 rounds, I am willing to take a shot on one of these guys, because I think the drop off comes after Hall, Akers, and Zeke are off the board.
Yeah, I just did a main event out of the 3 hole. I went Cooper Kupp, then I came back, went Alvin Kamara, then in the 3rd round I went Mike Evans, and then at the 4-10, Breece Hall was there. And I'm like, that's beautiful. I've got Kamara. I don't need Breece Hall to be awesome right out of the gate. And you're right. Breece Hall is a guy that if we could certainly start him week 1, and you could just want to hate yourself because he gets out-touched by Michael Carter and all that stuff. But I think you're not trying to build your team for week 1. You want to build it for the championship week. So Breece Hall isn't going to kill you, and he certainly could gain a role as the season goes on. And Michael Carter's small; he's not going to play a full season. So I mean, Breece Hall is he's a full-sized running back. He can catch, he can run. I mean, he's probably really, really good. So he's a guy that I love taking, especially with that build as an RB2. For sure.
And again, the fact that he's in the 4th round now, that's like pricing in a
that's right.
60-40 split in favor of Hall.
I took him as RB18.
Yeah. Like you're not
fine.
losing if he's getting 60% of the work as a 4th round pick.
Right. We're talking like rookie year Jonathan Taylor. That's the range where he was going.
Yep.
And I just to make sure I'm clear, I'm not anti Breece Hall. I'm just not quite as comfy now as I was a couple weeks ago.
His ADP seems to be dropping. I see him in
is.
the 4th and late 4th quite often, even in these FFPC drafts now.
Yeah.
And, we'll talk about wide receivers more, but just because we're talking about what you're considering in that range, looking at the ADP on DraftSharks.com, in that same range with those ugly running backs, we got DJ Moore, we got Terry McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, Jalen Waddle, Mike Williams. So, I mean, when I get to that point and I'm looking at those guys, or I'm looking at David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, Elijah Mitchell, Antonio Gibson, like, no, thanks, guys. I'm going to take a wide receiver, and then the RBs and I will meet back up later.
Yeah, exactly. We'll take a wide receiver, but I love the 4-5 turn at receiver. It's so good.
So before we close out on running back, it's behind that. Jared, you talked about the dead zone beginning after those 3 guys leave the board. So we're probably talking like mid to late round 4 through maybe round 6. Where do you think it ends there?
Yeah, like once Dobbins, Montgomery, and Jacobs, those are kind of the dead zone RBs to me that I don't really want anything to do with. I'm interested again when you get to like Tony Pollard in round 8. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I go back and forth on. Like in round 8, I'm willing to take some shots. Chase Edmonds is the guy I'm getting more excited about the closer we get to the season. But we only saw a few series from the Dolphins starters in the second preseason game, but Edmonds played 10 of 13 snaps with the first team. Got a couple targets. I think especially in PPR leagues, I don't think Edmonds is going to get 250 carries, but he can get 200 carries and 50 to 60 targets as he's a 10th rounder on ESPN according to their ADP. We have his ADP in the late 7th, but anywhere in that 7, 8, 9 range for Chase Edmonds in full PPR, he's kind of become one of my favorite RB targets. And I think ideally that's like your RB3. If you can get Edmonds in the 8th round, he's your 3rd running back, you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, I like the pool here. I mean, you mentioned CEH. I'm a little bit more still willing to take CEH than it sounds like you are, but I like him in that range. I like Chase Edmonds, as you talked about. There's Kareem Hunt a little bit behind that, but it's basically round 7 through round 9. The options look good in the context of where they're going, and assuming that you took some wide receivers in between. Yeah,
Tony Pollard is a guy for me. He's like the expensive high end of that. He's going in the 703. He's a guy that I believe absolutely has standalone value this year because of their lack of receiving weapons, and he's been working with the receiving coach. Like, I really think they know it's time to get him out there on the field. Plus, if Zeke goes down, he's a top 5 fantasy running back. He's already shown that. I like Ramondre Stevenson at the end of the 8th round. I think he's the best running back there. Again, Damian Harris had 15 touchdowns last year and was like the RB16. Like, he stinks. Like, he scores every single game, and you still can't even start him as an RB1.
Well, I think the takeaway there is it's a situation that's going to be frustrating, but Damian Harris is still operating first.
Maybe he doesn't personally stink, but I think Ramondre Stevenson's better.
To smell him, but I think that's going to be a backfield that frustrates anybody that bets too heavily. I'm not saying taking Ramondre Stevenson at that level is betting too heavily, but I'm definitely not in camp Stevenson's about to take over.
I don't know if he's going to take over, but he's got that. I think he's going to be, if they both play, he's going to be the higher scoring. I don't even think he needs the James White role, whatever that means. I mean, James White had like one good year, like 3 years ago. And it's the James
Did you guys
White
see the Belichick quote from yesterday where he's talking about like he wants all of these guys to be 3-down backs, and it seems like they might be getting rid of the James White role and they might be like rotating by series, which is what they did in that second preseason game. And I sat here on Monday and was like, they're not going to do that during the regular season, but that might be how it goes.
Yeah,
it might be Harris gets the first series, including third down work, and then Stevenson gets the second. So that backfield seems to be changing in New England.
Yeah, I feel like it's always been the best bet to take the cheaper option. Even last year, Ramondre Stevenson was the cheaper, and he had a couple smash games. It depends on the build too for him. Another guy in that range I like is Damian Pierce. I know his ADP right now is in the 10th round. I just have vibes about that situation where, this happens before these rookie running backs come in, and sometimes it takes a minute for us to kind of catch on. But I think the tea leaves are there. This reminds me, the talent, not the same, but this reminds me of situations where you had like Adrian Peterson rookie year, well, Chester Taylor's there, or you had like Larry Johnson rookie year, well, was it Priest Holmes or somebody was there? Like Jamal Charles, yeah. He's going to be caught in this committee, and they end up just being awesome. And I think obviously this isn't the same type of offense, but this could be a sneaky good offense. Nico Collins looks like he's coming around. The offensive line is better, and they want to run the ball. So Pierce he looked really, really good. And then they don't play. Like, I think Pierce is a guy that in the 10th round or even higher now, I think I just took him in Maine and maybe like the 9th. He's a guy that could be an RB1.
That's a guy that's going to go much later in your home leagues.
Yeah.
ESPN has his ADP at 1201.
Okay.
That's you can get Pierce in the double-digit round in your home league. I bet.
But I would take him. I like him better than the Patriots backs in that range.
I agree. Yes.
The thing that I was waiting for on Damian Pierce is how many touches they're going to give him, or if they're just going to spread it around. Mm-hmm. All of the indications since their first preseason game is they have been waiting to see what he is, and they've seen it, and now they're ready for him to lead the backfield. So in that range, that's what I'm interested in, is taking the guy that I think has a chance to emerge as the clear backfield leader, and I think Damian Pierce has that. Another guy that I have gotten comfier with over the course of draft season in that range is Cordero Patterson. And because we already saw last year what he can do if he gets the ball, we saw that ultimately the Falcons are willing to give him the ball that much if they need to. I don't think Arthur Smith wants to this year. I think that's what has been intimated by how he talked about Patterson after they re-signed him, but I think he might have to. I mean, the backfield stinks. So I haven't heard anything about Tyler Algier doing anything of significance. I just don't think anybody else in that backfield is going to be better than Mike Davis, it looks like. So there should be touch upside to Patterson. He's going to not be as good fantasy production-wise as last year. That is more than baked into where he's going, though. So similar to Damian Pierce, I would take him there and just take the chance that he's going to, again, dominate backfield touches.
The backfield stinks and the wide receiver core stinks, too. He's going to play a big role in the passing game, too. And I like that we've seen none of Patterson. He's played I think he's played exactly one snap in both the first two preseason games. They're obviously saving him. They know he's an older guy, and he did wear down late in the season. That's a concern. But again, that's priced in at his ADP. And I think how they've treated him this summer tells you he's going to play a big role in that offense.
They paid him relative to running back contracts.
Yeah, no, I love Cordero Patterson for sure. Going at the 8-12 in a lot of these FFPC drafts, right in that range of running backs for sure. Yeah, I mean, Marcus Mariota with his baby arm, he's not trying to throw it downfield. He's going to throw it to Cordero Patterson in the flats.
Both those quarterbacks have looked good this preseason, by the way.
Sure.
The offense might not
sneaky
be as...
good off. Somebody said there was a sneaky good offense.
It might not be as disastrous as we thought.
It's gonna be.
It's gonna be. Not for fantasy for those three guys.
That's gonna be an awful team. Marcus Mariota was not a good quarterback in Tennessee. It's not even because.
I'm not drafting Mariota, skills. But I'm drafting. They're gonna be losing every game. They're gonna have to throw in a dome all year. Well, let's go.
Yeah, draft Cordero Patterson because he's also game script proof. He's obviously going to be involved at receiving.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Are there any other specific targets you guys want to talk about in running back? I feel like once you get into double-digit rounds, it's just really about looking for the upside guys and not handcuffing your own running backs.
Yeah, I was going to say upside handcuffs. I agree, not handcuffing your own guys. I mean, Alex Madison's the obvious one. I think Rashad White we've talked about. Darrell Henderson gets more and more intriguing to me. They're talking about that being more of a committee than we've seen in recent seasons under Sean McVay. And then if Cam Akers does go down, Henderson becomes an RB1.
Mm-hmm.
Kenneth Walker, I'm interested to see how cheap he gets with this hernia surgery.
Well, before we get away from the handcuffs, I just want to say I think Madison and Henderson are like the two situations where I would be fine with handcuffing because those are the two direct replacements to the starters in very good situations for production.
Yeah, in a contained 12-team league, right, where you're not trying to beat out thousands of other teams.
I don't know, honestly, even in a tournament field, because the upside there is, the reason I'm interested is because I think both are direct replacements, both for usage and production. So I don't think you're losing out there the way that you do generally. And I get the concept of not handcuffing your running backs. There's also some potential to differentiate there because we all know about the not handcuffing your own running backs thing. So there's going to be fewer teams in that kind of field that do have Madison handcuffed to Dalvin Cook, for example.
Yeah, I will always fight the not handcuff. I mean, I understand it, but a lot of times we make up these scenarios where, like, oh well, okay, if he has Dalvin Cook or whatever, if he doesn't have Dalvin Cook and he has Madison and we're in a tournament and I have Cook and Madison and Cook goes down, well, he has a huge advantage. Well, what if his team? It only matters when the money weeks during the money weeks. And what if his team isn't even in the playoffs what if all those Cook teams aren't in the play? Like, I think like the weeks that Dalvin Cook missed last year, do you think people were pissed off that they had Alexander Madison on their team, handcuffed to Cook? No, they're like, thank God that I can start Alexander Madison, who was a top 5 fantasy running back when Cook was down. I think, I don't think you should be fading your own handcuff running back in those specific examples. I think Cook and Madison, I think Pollard's almost beyond that now. He's a standalone guy going in the 7th round. He's not that. But Henderson's another beautiful one. Henderson's a guy I've been taking, and we'll talk about like our targets, guys that we don't want to leave drafts with next week. I'll give you a little preview. Darrell Henderson's one of my guys because he's a guy that, like Matt said, think of James Conner last year. Edmonds went down. Conner was a slam dunk. These guys that are in these offenses that want to have one running back, and then when he goes down, the next one comes in and he gets all the touches. Those are the handcuff running backs that you want. And so I have no problem handcuffing Cook. I have no problem handcuffing Akers. In fact, that's even a little bit cheaper because you don't have to spend a first round pick. But handcuff your guy if that's what you want to do. Even in tournaments. Again, unless it happens like the last 2 weeks of the year, and there's a bunch of teams in there with Madison sitting on their bench. I think you're fine.
I think it depends on the size of the tournament too. Like, I think in the FFPC main event with 4,200 teams, I think it can work. In the Underdog tournament where it's 400,000 teams, I just can't imagine winning that thing with Dalvin Cook as a first round pick that misses a bunch of time and turns Madison into a
I still
good
think
pick.
in that very specific case, you're getting a direct replacement, and that.
Well, there's so many other teams. There's too many other teams that have Madison plus a great team.
Yeah, but that team, though, like you're not overpaying to get Madison, and you're also facing a dearth of teams that have Cook and Madison, and put Madison into that Cook slot, and thus aren't losing the Cook production. So it's not a good strategy overall, but I do think in those two specific cases,
you can say any strategy is good because it's contrarian. That's where we're at this point, right?
Like, I hate it.
It's different, so it's good.
Well, I think it's. I mean, there's definitely something to that. You have to do something that's different to win a field like that. And that's one of those things that's. Yeah, I get the overall argument, but if you apply it to those two very specific cases, I think it works.
And sorry, real quick, I just want to reiterate: it depends on what weeks they are. If it's weeks 2 and 3 and 4, it doesn't matter. If you get out of your league, it doesn't matter. It's if it happens in the money weeks, fine, it's negative EV. But I think it happens early, it doesn't matter. As long as you get out of your league.
All right, sorry, Jared. There's
Kenneth
another running back we were talking about.
Kenneth Walker, this guy who,
Does he still play football?
I mean, some people thought he was, as good of a at least rushing prospect as Breece Hall. He only went 4 or 5 picks after him in the NFL draft. It's funny that now Walker's the guy that's hurt, and Penny's relatively healthy. Penny is not a good bet to make it through the season without getting hurt.
Make it through training camp without getting hurt.
And I mean, if you're giving Walker 15 carries per game, even on a bad offense, like he's in the 11th round now. I think his ADP is going to continue dropping because we're not going to see him for the next 2 weeks, and there's a chance he misses the first game or 2 of the season.
Yeah, I would guess that he's not likely to play in week 1. He's a fine stash. It's the kind of situation where you don't need to have a Seahawks running back, but where they're going, you can also take either one and just take whatever they give you.
I'm just scared to death that one of these guys is going to be a monster like that. Like one of them's going to go down and the other one's just going to smash because they love to hand the ball off. And maybe the offense is better than we all think it's going to be. maybe.
Let's see. You're like the fantasy sanitation engineer right now. You're like the Texans, the Falcons,
Listen,
and the Seahawks
they're
are
going to
be sneaky good this year.
Sneaky good for those specific guys.
GTFO.
But I'm just saying they want to run the ball like crazy. And look what Rashad Penny did last year. I know they had Russell Wilson there. I know. But I mean, one of these, they're going to have weeks where they both pop, where one of them pops out. You're looking for an injury in this backfield. So all that to say is Kenny Walker, I think, is a really good running back. I don't know how he catches the ball yet, whatever, but I think Kenny Walker's a guy that I don't want to fade completely because Penny's not playing 17 games. Kenny Walker probably won't play 17 games, but when he does play and he has the backfield to himself, you're really going to want to start him.
He's just more talented than everyone else going like in that range of drafts. Like at some point, just bet on talent and you'll see what happens.
Just keep in mind that the only real monster in Seattle is Pete Carroll, who insists on making that team worse than it really should have been all these years.
Right.
All right, so let's shift to wide receiver, and we've talked about it some, so it probably won't take as long as running back. Jared, what about the early approach to wideout? And, maybe does it differ depending on where you're picking in round one?
Differs depending on where you're picking. Again, it differs, your scoring system and if you're starting 2 wide receivers versus 3. But to me,
I'm always surprised. Can I just say real quick? I'm always surprised that 2 wide receivers is so prominent because as long as I've been playing fantasy, 3 wide receivers has easily been the predominant format I've played. So I just always kind of assumed that was the standard. But there are a lot of people, and it might even still be more, that play starting 2 wideouts, which definitely changes things.
And it makes a huge
FFPC.
difference. Set up a draft war room with 2 wideouts and then change it to 3 and watch how high the wideouts start popping. So that it definitely matters. Again, draft war room, set it up. It will customize the rankings to our league. But Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson to me are top 4 picks unless you're in a non-PPR league, if those even exist anymore. But even in half PPR, I like those guys. Jamar Chase to me is like a mid-first round pick. Outside of that, I'm lower on Steph Diggs than you guys. Devontae Adams,
gross.
Why?
Yeah.
I just think it's going to be I don't think he's going to get back to the 28% target share he had in 2 years ago when he did score as a top 5 wide. I think it's going to be closer to what it was last year.
Wasn't he still 25, 26 last year?
Yes, last year, which I think is where he's going to be. And to me, that makes him I'm okay with him in the late first round. He feels like more like an early round 2 value. Same deal with Devontae Adams. I'll take him because I don't love some of the running backs going in that range, but I'm not excited when I get Steph Diggs at 10th overall.
Give me the guy that led the league in end zone targets and is playing with Josh Allen, and where the second target is Wunderkind Gabe Davis.
Wunderkind, who might lead the league in red zone targets this year.
Sorry, Wunderkind for our German listeners. All right, sorry, go ahead, Jared.
No, that's all I had for those first couple rounds. Again, I want to get to rounds 3 through 6. That's where you load up on wide receivers. I don't know how you guys feel.
There's not a spot in round 1 outside of maybe the 101 where I don't love receiver. Like I love Justin Jefferson. I love Cooper Kupp. I do love Stephon Diggs. I think just having the safety there, like you can't win your league in the round 1, but you can lose it. Like Stephon Diggs is going to be fine, even if he doesn't. Some people say he could be the wide receiver 1. I don't see that, but he could be. Sure. He's got a great quarterback, and but the only thing is they do have a new offensive coordinator, so who knows exactly what he's gonna do. But Stephon Diggs is awesome. I love CeeDee Lamb, Chase, fine. The only kind of receiver in that first round and a half that I'm not probably lower on than most is Devontae Adams, because again, he's used to having 30% target share from a Hall of Fame quarterback. Now he's not going to have 30% target share, and he doesn't have a Hall of Fame quarterback. They have a ton of weapons there. Adams isn't going to. He's going to have smash games, but he's not going to be as consistent. I'm higher on CeeDee Lamb than him. And when Mike Evans, when we had that kind of early in the summer when everything was looking good, I was kind of higher on Mike Evans than I was on Devontae Adams. But now I have Adams ahead of Evans.
It's worth noting, by the way, on the OC front, that Ken Dorsey spent the past 3 years as the quarterbacks coach in Buffalo. So it's not like they brought in somebody totally new. It is somebody who's been in the system. We'll see. Things will change. But I've also read where they've been loving how Josh Allen and Ken Dorsey work together. So we might even see things get better.
Yeah.
And obviously, the preseason offers small looks, but that offense was devastating against Denver last week. A Denver team that should be at least decent and maybe good on defense, missing maybe a few guys. But I don't think anybody is expecting the Bills to disappoint on offense. But there's a chance that they could be even better, because Brian Dable, they were very good the past couple of years. Nobody was talking about Brian Dable as a strong offensive mind before the past 2 years, though.
True.
It might not be a loss.
Yep.
He's definitely not a loss. And I will say real quick, Case Keenum is a guy who's been around the league. He said in an interview that he's never seen a relationship between a quarterback and an old coordinator like he's seen with Dorsey and Josh Allen. So I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like there is a chance that Diggs, I guess, let me backtrack. He could be the wide receiver one. I just think they have so many weapons there that Josh trusts that they don't need to do that.
All those weapons are a great reason to consider Josh Allen in round 4, by the way. I do think that there's the upside to lead the position for Diggs because we saw him get close to that a year ago. Obviously not this past season, but the one before. And even though I also would not project 28+% target share, I think that's within the range of outcomes. If Gabe Davis is like just okay, relative to expectations, or if he gets hurt. If he gets hurt, I mean, they still have pretty good set of receivers, but not anybody that's anywhere close to Stephon Diggs. And even if Stephon Diggs just has like the strong touchdown rate season that seems like it's coming if he keeps getting targeted that often in the end zone. I'm not saying Stephon Diggs wide receiver 1. I'm saying if he finishes the season wide receiver 1, I'm not going to be like, oh, who could have seen that coming?
Well,
Right.
Well, the target share thing is the only thing that, the only ingredient missing is we know he's talented. We know he has the quarterback. We know it's a fast-paced, pass-heavy offense. So if he gets that 28% target share, then he all the ingredients are there for that wide receiver 1 finish.
So if I'm picking late in round 1, I'm more willing to take Stephon Diggs in that 8, 9, 10, through the end of the round range. Even if, Barkley's sitting there looking at me, Joe Mixon, who I like, is sitting there looking at me, I'm okay with saying, I'm going to wait and see what gets back to me in round 2. And then if those running backs don't, I'm also okay with taking CeeDee Lamb around the turn because there's a chance that James Conner is going to get to me late in round 3. And frankly, if I take Stephon Diggs and CeeDee Lamb and then you guys let me get James Conner at the end of round 3, you might as well just hit auto draft the rest of the way and give me your money because it's over.
Pack up the briefcase. And that's a good point. Like that's where drafting and volume comes in handy. Like you need to have all these plans, even starting in round 1, you need to know, hey, who do I like in round 2? Who do I like in round 3? It's just a great point. Take Diggs. If you're okay with not getting Barkley, take Diggs. And if you don't get Barkley, you take like a CeeDee Lamb, or if you're in tight end premium, you take Kyle Pitts and then come back and get your James Conner if you really love him in the 3rd round. So you almost got to think 2 rounds ahead with some of this stuff.
If James Conner doesn't get there, Cam Akers could be, Travis Etienne could be. I'm okay with passing there and just waiting and collecting those running backs later that we talked about. So, it's that flexibility is important. We're talking about perfect ways to approach all these positions. And I always put perfect in finger quotes because the biggest thing for me, Jared, you have to be flexible in a draft. Because if you go in saying this is what I'm going to do from the 11 spot and things go differently than you expected, then you're screwed if you're not ready to be flexible.
Yeah, you're just missing out on value that the draft's presenting you. I don't want to spend too much time on Lamb, but I just feel like he's priced as if everything's going to go perfectly. He's priced as if he's elite, which
he is. Keep going.
If you look at some of the advanced stuff, which I know you hate, Adam, he hasn't been elite yet.
Projected, what is it?
And he's priced as if he's gonna get the huge target share, which we haven't seen him earn yet. And the opportunities, obviously, I don't not like him. I just think again, he's kind of priced as if nothing's gonna go wrong.
I would be more wary of him if he weren't surrounded by Devontae Adams, who is in the new place with competition like he hasn't had before. Deebo Samuel, who I don't like anywhere close to these guys. Tyreek Hill, who has just as many questions. Mike Evans, who has the target share questions and also hasn't gotten the dominant target share at all over a longer stretch with the same team. So I would, if we had surer things around CeeDee Lamb, I would agree that I'd be wary of him. But as it is, I'm fine with betting on him, even in the range where I'm assuming things are going right.
Lamb is the point where I'd rather go running back at that point. Definitely rather have Saquon Barkley. I'd lean towards like Joe Mixon over CeeDee Lamb too, depending on format, of course, and what you did in the 1st round.
I would definitely take both of those running backs over Lamb, but I am also okay with taking him in that range. And if Barkley and Mixon are gone and Dalvin Cook's gone and Derrick Henry's gone, I'm probably taking Lamb over like DeAndre Swift, Aaron Jones, who I don't really like at that 2nd round price either.
Yeah, the 3 guys I want in tight end premium is I want Lamb, I want Barkley, and I want Kyle Pitts in the 2nd round. One of those 3 guys, and I'm absolutely thrilled. And you can generally get one of those 3 guys, except unless you're picking at the very back end of round 2. And the cool thing about that is round 3 is there's so many good receivers, and you got the James Conner and the ETNs, and so you can go any route the first 2 rounds or the 2nd and 3rd round. But I just love Lamb, the upside. He's a guy that you might think this, I don't know, people might think this is crazy, but I think he has as good of a chance as Stephon Diggs to be like that wide receiver. I mean, he could see 150 or 60 targets. I mean, his competition isn't great at all. So, I mean, we're talking about Tony Pollard getting run at slot receiver. Dalton Schultz, is he the only other? So and Lamb is a guy that's chasing money. Like, I love young players that are chasing money that, this is going to be, that live in these big cities. Man, New York City, Saquon Barkley's chasing money, CeeDee Lamb's chasing money. These guys want to ball out. So, and him being the only receiver there, he could be absolutely awesome.
No income tax, I believe, in Texas.
Perfect.
So CeeDee Lamb gets even more money.
That's right, more money.
So, yeah, you can check the Perfect Draft Series to get round by round recommendations here. Jared, you said you wanted to get into that round 3 through 6 range at wideout.
Yeah, I mean, earmark those. And 3 could be Connor, as we said. I like ETN there in full PPR leagues. But I guess especially rounds 4 through 6, I'm very often taking 3 straight wide receiver, even if I already have 1 or 2. T. Higgins in round 3 is like one of my favorite picks in drafts in general at any position. DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, Mike Williams, Brandon Cooks, Allen Robinson. Just get a few of those guys. If they're your second and third receivers, third and fourth, I think that's the time to do it. And again, we talked about we don't like the running backs in that range. The tight ends I don't love in that range, and the quarterbacks you can get in round 7, even round 6 if you have to. So again, 4, 5, 6 wide receivers for me.
I agree. Adam Thielen, I don't think you mentioned Michael Thomas toward the end of that range. Jerry Jeudy's somebody that I'm not excited about, but if I am hoping to get a wideout and the guys that I want more are not there, I'm like, okay, I'll take Jerry Jeudy. I like Russell Wilson enough. He's at least the wide receiver 2 there. And especially if Cortland Sutton's already gone, I'm like, all right, I'll take the guy who could be the number 1 wide receiver. Darnell Mooney is somebody that I'm more okay with than targeting. Rashad Bateman in that range. So I agree. 4 through 6, and even into 7 or 8 in the right leagues, you can still find all these guys and collect, 4 to 5 of them.
I was gonna say, have you guys seen the ADPs on Rashad Bateman? Like, I know we do a lot of these high stakes leagues, so we're kind of in that bubble. But our ADP on Draft Sharks has him at 802. ESPN ADP is 808.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
And during my fades, targets and fades article, I was looking up Bateman. I mean, 801 is what I had a couple of days ago. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And that's another reason why you can kind of wait, knowing the ADPs of this stuff. I know it's sometimes I do all these high stakes leagues, high volume, and then, all the friends home leagues start like next week. Yep. And I get into these draft rooms that I'm not used to, ESPN, Yahoo, and I'm trying to look, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
You forget somebody's on the board.
Right, I'm like, Bateman's there in the 8th round.
See, I don't even have the balls to let him get to the 8th. If he's there in the 7th, I'm even willing to just take him in the 6th to make sure I get him.
Right.
But if he's there in the 7th, I'm not passing Rashad Bateman in round 7.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, Bateman for sure. And to kind of go back to what you guys were saying, like there's so many receivers that you can see paths to just glory in the 4th, 5th, and 6th round. Bateman's being one of them. Early on in the 4th, I like Allen Robinson, some of this high stakes stuff, and then after that 4 or 5 turn is just so sweet with Marquise Brown and Big said Brandon Cooks, Jerry. I'm a little higher on Jerry Jeudy than others. I think I've done 5 or 6 mains, and I think I have Jeudy in like 4 of them because I've had that kind of that wraparound, and I just think Jeudy has that. That ability, he could be the number 1 there by targets at least. By
who do we not like margin in this range?
I was just gonna say,
honestly,
Elijah Moore.
I don't.
Amari Cooper.
Those guys. I mean,
I'm on
where
Ra.
are their?
I'm on Ra in that range.
I don't love Terry McLaurin.
I don't like Terry McLaurin. I don't like Deontay Johnson in that range just because there's so many weapons there.
DK Metcalf.
I'll take Deontay Johnson because he's falling, though. I mean, we're talking about a guy who was, 3rd in the league in targets last year. I mean, all he has to do is still be used similarly, and he's a smash.
Yeah, I mean, Metcalf's an interesting one. I feel like Metcalf is a guy that we could be maybe a little bit low on.
Seahawks offense isn't going to be too bad.
I know, it's going to be sneaky. It's going to be a sneaky, deaky offense.
Yeah, Cortland Sutton's somebody that tends to go before I want him, although that's probably less true in home leagues. Probably the guy, I don't love Chris Godwin in that range that we've talked about a bunch of times. One guy that I don't dislike but always goes earlier than I want him is Michael Pittman. And I don't know. I think it's just a matter of him not quite having the target ceiling to match where I need to take him, just versus who else is there. I guess A.J. Brown is similar for the basically the same reason.
Yeah, I mean, DJ Moore is going behind Michael Pittman in most ADPs. That's why I don't have much Pittman because I prefer Moore among those guys. I'm with you, Matt. I think Pittman kind of lacks that huge ceiling just because we don't expect the Colts to be this super, fast-paced pass. They're going to pass more, everything we've heard, which is good news for Pittman. I think he's a safe pick. He doesn't excite me in round 3.
Yeah, he's not excited. He's a guy that I don't want to be as low as I am on as far as amount of times that I've drafted him. But like when he goes like wide receiver 9, it's like, there's not much upside. I feel like he would have to be unbelievable for him to pay off anything higher than that.
Yeah, I think he's my CeeDee Lamb for what Jared said earlier. Is he's being drafted where we're assuming everything is going to go perfectly for him. And
Sure.
I don't feel the need to take him. And all these wide receivers that we're talking about are why I even feel better about those 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds, or possibly even taking my 3rd running back in round 4, because I know that 5 through 9, and we haven't even talked about Brandon Ayuk.
Yep.
Drake London is in that mix. Tyler Lockett's going later than he should. Robert Woods, now that Treylon Burks has proved he's just a toddler in NFL terms. The guys are going to continue. Christian Kirk, it just keeps going. Every turn, I'm like, oh, I can get another wide receiver here. I'm glad I went ahead and took James Conner as my 3rd running back because my league mates are idiots.
Yeah, I'm taking a break in round 7, maybe for that elite quarterback. Maybe I'm mixing in Dallas Goedert, who we'll talk about next. But yeah, once you get back to round like 9, 10, 11, the guys you mentioned, man, the 3 I've written down, my 3 favorites, Drake London. I'm betting on his talent as a top 10 pick, and a massive producer at USC, and volume,
and a sneaky offense,
and a sneaky good offense. Drake London, Christian Kirk, who I think is going to be the number 1 receiver in a Jags offense we're buying into, and Kadarius Toney, I'm still in on. Less in than I was, a couple months ago. It hasn't been the best offseason, but 9th round, 10th round for Kadarius Toney. I'll take a shot on the talent.
Yeah, what are we? Brandon Ayuk is a guy again in that range, like. DeAndre Hopkins is going, Hunter Renfrow. Hopkins is a guy, again, we're playing for the end of the year. We're assuming he's going to be awesome the second half of the year. Hunter Renfrow, assuming he's gonna still be really good there. I think he finishes like a high-end wide receiver 2. He's not going to do that, but he could certainly be a very high-end wide receiver 3. Brandon Ayuk is a guy that I don't see a path to greatness there. As far
here's the path. Are we sure that Deebo Samuel finishes the year with more targets than Brandon Ayuk?
But I think we have a quarterback that is a run-first quarterback that has Kittle and has Deebo, and every time I turn around, he's throwing an 80-yard touchdown to Danny Gray. Danny Gray was he the guy that started week 1 last year over IU? I feel like every time I turn, it was somebody else.
Gray's a rookie,
Sherfield, right?
Sherfield.
There you go. I feel like there's someone that always weasels their way in. If I'm taking the so-called 3rd receiving option on a team, I want it to be for like a Joe Burrow or a guy that's not going to run the ball. So he's the 3rd receiving option and the 4th or 5th offensive option between the quarterback running and them handing it off. I just feel like if I'm taking a receiver there, I'm pretty confident that the second half of the year, DeAndre Hopkins is definitely going to outscore Brandon Ayuk. So, I'm pretty sure that Renfrow was going to outscore Brandon Ayuk the whole year. I just don't think Ayuk has a path to glory. Like Adam Thielen. When Adam Thielen plays, he's going to be awesome. So I don't know. That's my thoughts.
So to me, Brandon Ayuk is okay. So here's the case for Brandon Ayuk. If you're sure that he's not more than the 3rd receiving option this year, then it's fine to pass on him because you're not missing it. What I know is there are going to be lots of things that surprise us every year, and I think that saying that Brandon Ayuk could lead the 49ers in targets this year, a former first-round pick who was just sluggish last year after a very nice rookie season, the possibility that he could, which I do think is a possibility, makes him a good guy to take at least some in this range.
Almost everyone was sure that Brandon Ayuk was the Niners' top receiver at this time a year ago. I think there's a path for him to beat Deebo Samuel in targets, and I think the other upside case for Ayuk is it is such a narrow target tree that if Deebo or Kittle go down, and both those guys have had lots of injury issues, then Ayuk becomes a lot easier. I'm still mostly with you, Adam, that I like Drake London better. I like Christian Kirk better. I probably like DeAndre Hopkins better. So I don't have a ton of Ayuk, but in the 8th, 9th round, I think he can pay off that price.
For what it's worth, if we're betting on Trey Lance, the upside is that he is also at least competent as a passer and maybe good, and he can bring wide receivers along with him. He's not going to run the ball, 300 times this year.
Yeah, I'm just never going to feel comfortable starting. If you draft Ayuk in the 6th round, you want to start him week 1.
Well, I'm not taking him in the 6th. We're taking him like 7th, 8th.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at FFPC data here, but
you're in that bubble.
Sorry, I'm in that bubble.
All right, so let's hit tight end because we're running short on time. And Jared, it's really just Dallas Goedert, right? That's the perfect.
Hold on, real quick, because I can't leave a podcast without saying Isaiah McKenzie, starting slot, going in the 20th round of home leagues. Take him. Go ahead.
I can get on board with that.
Yep, I agree. Travis Kelce's in play for me near the 1-2 turn. Kyle Pitts, I'll let Adam wax poetic on Kyle Pitts. But Dallas Goedert is my top target at tight end. We have his ADP at 7-11. He's going in the 8th round on ESPN. I think he is just about 2 rounds underpriced. And I think he's going to be, he's going to be closer to the Waller Kittle tier, I think, than like the tier behind him when you're talking about, the Cole Kmets and the Pat Freiermuths.
Adam, before we have people take another shot for you talking about the Falcons offense being underrated,
Sneaky.
I like Travis Kelce where he's going. I think he belongs where he's going. I like Kyle Pitts where he's going. I think he belongs there. I don't end up finding myself getting there most of the time on either of those guys because of the options that are available at tight end later. I feel better when I draft, and this is not tight end premium. We're not talking about an FFPC draft, but in a more standard PPR draft, I feel better about the teams when I'm taking running backs, wide receivers in those ranges, and then looking further down the board once we get toward Dallas Goedert territory.
Totally get it. Yeah, I'm a tight end premium addict, so I get it. But for non-tight end premium, forget homely, whatever. Like even like the FFWC, which is start three receivers, non-tight end premium. That is, you're able to get Goddard in like the 8th, 9th, 10th round of those drafts. Much prefer Goddard in the 9th or 10th round than maybe Pitts in like the 3rd. You know what I mean? Because like you said, you need to really load up on those receivers in those type of drafts. So Goddard is a guy that I have a ton of as my tight end 1, but also in a bully tight end build in a tight end premium where I've gone Pitts in round 2 and gone Goddard in round 6. I've gone Kelce in round 1 and gone Goddard in round 6. Mm-hmm. Like you can really dominate a position, and you're going to be starting Goddard in the flex in this. Like when you go bully tight end, forget the actual players, but when you go bully tight end, you're starting tight end in that flex spot. It makes it so you don't have to be as deep at receiver or you don't have to be as deep at running back because every week you're starting Goddard in the or whatever that second tight end is. If you went, really high, maybe Kittle and Kelce or something. So it ends up making it so you don't have to be so right on all of those other positions. So love Pitts. I mean, I talk about him every single time, but I think Pitts is fine at the 3-4 turn is where he's going in a lot of these home leagues or start 3 receiver drafts. And I get if you want to go another route, especially when you can get Goddard in like round 9.
And Jared, if we're concerned about the target shares or available targets in Philadelphia at all, I think it's worth mentioning there's a chance that this team just goes much more toward the pass than we can reasonably project coming off of last season because they have been throwing the ball a lot in, the scant glances we've gotten at the first team this year. They certainly handled the offseason as though they want to throw the ball significantly more than last year. Hey, if we're going to play the sleeper over-unders, by the way, this could be a good offense to look at for betting overs on receptions. Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, passing numbers for Jalen Hurts early in the season. So if you go to sleeper.com/DraftSharks, make your first deposit now. They will match it up to $100. So go ahead and register for the sleeper over-unders, sleeper.com/DraftSharks. Jared, back to tight ends. What you got?
I was going to say with Goddard, that is part of my assumption with his projection that the Eagles are going to pass more. I think everything they've done this offseason said that that's going to be the case. If they're once again a bottom 3 pass rate team, then it's going to be trouble for Goddard, but I don't think that's going to be the case. If I miss out on Goddard, I'm basically just playing a game of like tight end chicken and just like seeing, which of these guys, Evan Ingram, Tyler Higbee, David Njoku, Gerald Everett. I just want to be like the last one to grab 1 or 2 of those guys at the position. Yeah,
and Evan Ingram and David Njoku are like the 2 safety nets for me. And most of the time I will be able to get one of those. So I do like Goddard. I'm certainly looking at him. That's a reason where if it's close, I'm okay with waiting to see if he gets to the next round.
What's up with Robert Tonyan? Like I feel like, we need to make sure we talk about Robert Tonyan. We don't want to miss on Robert Tonyan.
I don't think we've said his name much on this podcast.
That's what I'm saying.
He's off the PUP list, but I don't think he's practicing yet.
I'm okay with not being in on
him. I feel like him having. I'm not in on him, but I'm just saying I feel like we're forgetting about him. He was unbelievably efficient 2 years ago with Rodgers. I mean, he has no weapon. I mean, people don't know who
the thing is the unbelievable efficiency, though, is if you're telling me that he will again get 70 targets and score 11 times on that, then okay, I'm in. But that's almost definitely not happening.
Well, the TD rate's coming down from what it was 2 years ago, but he could see more targets, obviously. With Adams gone. He's going late enough.
If he were not coming off an ACL tear, I'd be interested. But I mean, if I'm choosing between him and Evan Ingram, like, why are you talking to me about Robert Tonyan? But that's the range.
Well,
Ingram's going.
I think you take both of them. Tonyan has to be your tight end too because you're not going to be able to trust him early on, probably not until October. But if you are going, this too late tight end strategy, I think he's an option.
Yeah, he's going as tight end to 21.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like he's a guy that again, he's in an offense where no one knows what's going on at receiver, and he's already shown. Rodgers has already shown to like him. So I feel like he's a guy that you're certainly not going to rely on him, but he's a guy that in a lot of these home leagues probably won't even get drafted, and you just keep an eye on him.
I'd rather take
early.
Tunyon than Logan Thomas. I bucket them together because they're both coming off the knee injury.
Yeah.
He's probably not going to be useful week 1, but I think at least Tunyon in that offense, has more upside than Thomas does.
I would love to hit the season with neither of those guys on my roster, though. To be fair,
That's fine.
We had to talk about Bob Tunyon.
Even in
Bob,
that range,
well, we
like
just have
Hayden
it,
Hurst is there and healthy and playing for the Bengals. So I don't, if I'm
I like
really
Hayden
looking
Hurst.
there, Austin Hooper in Tennessee. So I think there are healthier versions of the guys we're talking about down there.
Yeah, I prefer Hurst to Tunyon and Logan Thomas.
Exactly.
Bengals tight end. That's what it is.
No,
Bengals
I know.
tight end.
It's just all those tight ends are. I just feel like it's been Hurst's season for like 4 years, and it's just.
See, I was never part of that, so I haven't been burned yet. So it's going to happen
still
for me
not
this year.
Hurst's season for me either. I'm not betting on him, but if we're down in that range and I'm looking at either him or Robert Tunyon, then I'll take Hayden Hurst. But if I'm looking in that range at tight end, I'm like, why is this draft not over yet? All right, but that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. You can head over to draftsharks.com now. You can find updated versions of that perfect draft series. If you haven't done so already, you should also set up your own draft war room because that's going to show you what your perfect draft looks like. It'll help you all the way throughout. You'll get all your settings in there. You can sync it to your league. It will automatically take players off the board as you draft. Going to make drafting so much easier and more productive than it's been for you in the past. For Jared Smola, Adam Krautwurst, and the entire Draft Sharks crew, I'm Matt Schauf saying thanks so much for swimming with us.